Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to episode 32 of Monorail Memoirs. Disney Vacation Club, what is it? I have spoken about DVC extensively on the show and never actually explained in detail what it is. This is not going to be an hour-long comprehensive review. This is going to be 15 to 20 minutes of headline, surefire things. And if you have questions, let us know, drop it in the comment section, etc., and I will get back to you. Lauren is not a DVC member, nor are you familiar with DVC, and despite that, we love you anyway. In this week, we will get into it in detail, but before we do, as always, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to learning a lot about DVC because I hear you and Dad talk about it all the time, points and systems and hotels and all this, that and the other. And obviously, Lorne. So I'm really excited to kind of be the audience, if you will, in this one and ask a few questions, maybe something that you guys are thinking at home. I don't know.
I haven't even done this on purpose. This is just all the DVC stuff on my desk. Like, I haven't even done it on purpose. This is just stuff that lives here.
Sponsored.
I chuffing wish. I don't think anyone's ever been sponsored to push DVC. So let's get into this then. You may have seen these signs around the park, Disney Vacation Club. You'll see that they've got these nice little folders of different Disney resorts sat there. You can flick through it, and at no point is there a price, because heaven forbid we should talk about actual money. I am going to be able to give some representative examples here, but it's not going to be the full detail. I said this is designed to be an overarching what is DVC, and you know what the members get, what are the sorts of costs we look at. But I'm not going to be doing a price by price example breakdown. If you're interested in that, I can do that at some point. But how does this work? There are two ways to purchase DVC contract. You either buy direct from Disney themselves, or you purchase resale, which, as the name suggests, is on a resale market. We'll discuss the differences between those towards the end of this. You will buy X number of points a year at Y resort. So what does that mean? You will literally have a contract for one resort. At that resort that is, it is named, each resort has a different end of contract date, because this is a timeshare. Now, I know people, let me be really clear here. When people think timeshare, you get these horrible visions of being stuck with properties in Spain, for example, that they don't want, that gets passed on to generational debt that nobody ever wants to use, and you can't sell them, and then you get these fake companies that say you can buy you out of it. Timeshare is the legal phrase for this, but you have to think of it as a separate entity and product compared to what the colloquial understanding of what a timeshare is. This is, this is always going to have value because it's literally Disney and non-Disney property, so you always be able to get something for it, and you can leave the contract at any point. You just stop paying your dues and they kick you out. So, like, you are not tied to this. It would be a silly investment and you'd lose money, but you'd lose value, should I say? But you are not tied to this, so don't worry in that sense. Yes, it's a timeshare, but it's not like that. So you'll buy a certain number of points per year at a certain resort. Every year, you've got annual dues come up. January, love it. That is where you will pay a price per point per year. So what does that mean? My DVC contract is at, I nearly said Alani then, and I got really excited just because I'm looking at my Alani pen. It isn't. My DVC contract's at the Riviera, and I've got a couple of hundred points. And so every year, the price per point is released, which at the minute is like $9 something. So every year, my annual dues is $9 times the number of points that I've got, and I have to pay that annually. That is separate from the upfront fee to buy in. Now, my contract, as with all contracts at Riviera, are through to 2074, I think it is. It's a lot. Is that right? 2074? I can't even remember. That's how long my contract is. It's a long time. I can't even. Yeah, it was 46 years from when I bought it. So no, a bit less than 2069 or something. I can't remember. Public maths is difficult. So if I say a long time, yeah, I think it was 2069 actually, and I will just check that. But the annual dues are going to be based on the number of points that you have got. That you've got. The points per night vary on location and depending on time of year, as you do with any hotel reservation, you will have paying a different amount depending on the night that you stay there for. Because I mean, Lauren, we did a video a couple of weeks ago about staying in on site versus off site. I mean, how much fluctuation do you see in prices from the off season to the peak season?
Yeah, there is quite a lot, really, especially when you're talking around sort of Christmas time or Halloween time. That's really big in kind of the world of Disney, and I know America and just in general. But also you've got the summer price hikes as well. So do you see those sort of changes when you're kind of looking at when you're going to be booking and things?
Lauren, I'm so glad you've asked because as Art Attack did say, here's what I prepared earlier. So you can Google something called the DVC points charts. Now this is, and I can't stress this enough, this is just for this year at one resort. So you see Animal Kingdom villas here. We'll get into which resorts are part of DVC and which aren't afterwards. But here is a very, looks like a complex table, but it's actually really easy to work out. Let's say, as we were discussing before, that we are going to spend, it was a week in early February, was the example we seem to have used for the last few episodes. So let's do that now. So on the left-hand side of the column, you'll find the date section that you require. So for us, it's actually conveniently the middle one, where it says February 1 through February 15, the middle one. We know then that is the window that we're going to be going through. So along the top, you'll see there's different types of rooms: the deluxe studio, the 1-bedroom villa, 2-bedroom villa, 3-bedroom grand villa. I mean, Christ, if you could stay there, congrats. And then underneath, you'll see that there's different room views. So the key at the top left tells you value accommodation, standard view, Savannah view room, which is where my wife and I like to go. So let's say we're first week in February, and we're looking for a Savannah view room. So what we would do is we would take the middle row here, because we're looking at February 1 to February 15. Weekly, it tells us what it is for the week. Savannah view, we come down, it's 125 points for a week. So that, if we take that as our standard room that we want to stay in, look at how that price fluctuates throughout the year. If we look at the top row, September 1 through September 30, that would only be 97 points. Let's look at the bottom where it's the most expensive. Let's say we're going over the Christmas week, December 24th to December 31. It'll be 193 points. And so just as it is with hotels, different points are worth different amounts throughout the year, depending on the room you want to stay in, the resort you want to stay in, and the time of year you want to go. That to me seems quite intuitive. I was scared by points charts at first, but does that seem to make sense?
Yeah, it seems quite overwhelming when you look at it like that, but when you break it down easily like that, it does seem fairly simple to kind of understand. But kind of year on year, I'm assuming that changes.
So yes and no. They are allowed per resort because of the horror that was timeshares. US legislation, in particular in the state of Florida, got really tight on what a timeshare is, what they can and can't do. They got really tight on it. So each resort is allocated X number of points when it's originally built. They cannot change the number of points that a resort has. All they can do is move them around. So what does that look like? It means that a room one year could cost more per night in February than it does the next year, but the total cost of all of the rooms added up is not allowed to change.
Right. Okay.
So you can see fluctuations in some rooms in some times of year if they are more or less popular, but the overall for that particular resort is never going to go up or down. That is the points affixed to that resort. And that is why when you look at the older resorts like Old Key West, like Saratoga, the original ones, the per point per night rooms are so much cheaper. They're so much more cost effective than something like the Riviera, for example, that I have, or some of the new ones. I did Google, by the way, whilst you were talking. And yes, my Riviera resort contract expires January 31st, 2070. So yeah. I thought it was 46 years from when I signed it, but different ones have different expiration dates, and that is a large part of the cost, because when we bought into it, there was a lot of it left. So it was I can't remember the exact figures. I can dig them out if people are interested, but it was something like $30,000 for the buy-in costs of the number of points that we wanted, and then there's the annual dues as well that tick over quite literally every year. Now, what resorts are included? So this is by no means a comprehensive list, but what we have here is an indication of the majority of DVC resorts are located in and around Walt Disney World. That is where most of them are located. You've got a few over in California, like the Grand California, for example, on the Disneyland Hotel. You've got Alani over in Hawaii, which I may or may not have mentioned on this podcast once or twice. And then you've got two other resorts. You've got Vero Beach, which is in Vero Beach, Florida on the East Coast. And another one, Hilton Head, which is in South Carolina. Both Vero Beach and Hilton Head are up for renewal in 2042. And it's believed that they'll probably get sold off because it hasn't worked the way they intended. The reality is that people aren't going there to get their sort of Disney away from Disney. I've stayed at Vero Beach. It is quite nice. I was doing my ultra marathon down there, doing the Vero Beach Octopus. If anybody wants to Google that, it's pretty miserable. Good fun though. And in February of next year, I will be staying at Hilton Head, so I'll be able to give a more comprehensive review of that because I want to get them done whilst I can. But it means that the resorts are spread out throughout the world. There's an exchange program where you can do other hotels throughout the world. Non-Disney ones doesn't make sense. Don't do it. You can use DVC points for things like theme park tickets. Don't do it. Doesn't make sense. You can use DVC points for a Disney Cruise Line. Don't do it. Doesn't make sense. It is cheaper to buy cash. It's not worth it. They'll try and entice you with all these things, but don't do it. It doesn't make sense. So you've got a contract for X number of points at Y resort, and the idea is that then you are tied to that resort. You can book that resort 11 months in advance. 11 months in advance. If you are looking to book for a resort where you do not have the contract, so a great example is we, of course, are going to be going to Animal Kingdom Lodge to do the springtime surprise. Happy days. That is in April. I own my contract at Riviera, so I couldn't book that 11 months out. But you can book other resorts from 7 months out. So the 7-month window, we booked that, and that's why we're going to be staying there, which means that the resorts that you own your contract at, you've got a greater chance of getting the room as opposed to somewhere else. So for really popular places, like the Beach Club is a great example here. Trying to stay at the Beach Club in that 7-month window, unless you're really flexible and you only want a couple of days midweek, is really hard to do. So the best way to stay at Beach Club is to own a contract at Beach Club. Now, I bought Riviera. The reason we bought Riviera was actually because of the contract length. That was the selling factor, not so much the Riviera itself, but it was the contract length. And we do have a certain degree of flexibility, so that 7-month window is usually enough for us to be able to get broadly what we want anyway. So that is the benefit of that. There is one other thing I want to talk about though before we sort of get into free flow conversation, which is the difference between direct and resale. So here's just a picture of some of the different DVC resorts. Buying a contract direct with Disney is more expensive. Shocker. However, it does come with more perks. And the example of that is you have to purchase at least a 150-point contract at the minute to achieve these perks. But it's things like having access to the DVC Members Lounge in Epcot and now Magic Kingdom. It's like being able to use, you can get annual passes if you're a non-Florida resident, but you are DVC members that you can't get otherwise at the minute. And there's all these little perks like this. The biggest one is that depending on what contracts you get, if you get one of the newer ones, so if you were to buy a resale contract at Riviera, for example, you could only use those points at the Riviera. So they're worth less value in that sense. And this is going to happen for but this happened for Wilderness Lodge, which is one of the more recent ones. It will happen when they finally open, I can't remember what it's called, Lakeshore Lodge. When that opens, that's going to be the same restriction as well. So the deeds for the newer contracts, if you buy them resale, you can only use them at those locations. All the older ones, though, and I say older ones, everything that really up until sort of the 2060, 2064 time horizon, you can use at any resort. So if I need more points, for example, I'm not going to buy a direct contract because I've got enough points to get all the perks that I bought direct with Disney. So if I need any more points on a routine permanent basis, I will go and buy a resale contract from somewhere like DVC Resale. Other vendors are available, but somewhere like DVC Resale, they're not sponsored this. And what you do is you would buy that contract. So let's say I've got X number of points at Riviera, as I do, and I need 100 points a year more. I've just worked out I'm going more often. What I would do is I would look on a resale site for a contract at a resort that I like. Let's say the Grand Floridian, or I don't know, the Grand Floridian, and I find a 100-point contract. I can buy that contract and the number of years that it has left, and then I've got the points that I have at the Riviera plus the points that I have at Magic Grand Floridian, and so it means that at the 11-month window, I can book the Riviera, and I can book the Grand Floridian.
Oh.
Exactly. That's a big win, right?
Yeah.
But it does mean that come January every year, I'm going to pay my dues for the Riviera, and I got to pay my dues for the Grand Floridian, which is why the annual dues, it varies place to place, and it's worth looking at because Vero Beach contracts at the minute are ridiculously cheap because they run out in 2042. Vero Beach contracts, you can literally get them for between $4,000 and $6,000 for 100 plus points a year. It's incredible. Here's your problem: your annual dues, it's about $15 a point, and so it's 50% more than I'm paying for annual dues every single year for the rest of the contract. There's a lot there, Lauren. There's
a lot of numbers.
And it has been a quick counter through, but the idea has been to try and give just a general wave top overlay. What questions do you think people will have about DVC?
So I think one of the main things that I've been thinking about is it actually worth it? Are you getting enough bang for your buck? Because you've got to think about the big, payment as soon as you sign up, that's 30 grand or whatever. And then you've got this yearly fee. How often do you need to go for it to actually be worth it?
So we did the maths, and you can Google. There are DVC calculators that people have made online to work this out. For us, bear in mind, when we purchased it, it was going to be a 46-year contract. If we had stayed on Disney property every year for a week at a time, after 26 years, it would have paid for itself.
Right.
Now, that was just our situation. Some people don't go to Disney every year. Some people go to Disney more often than once a year. Some people, if you're not going to go at least every other year, I don't think it's worth it.
No.
But if you are, then it certainly is worth it, and you want to stay on Disney property. Now, what it means is a great example, and I know that another indicator that I used here was just a week in February. But if you can wangle it, if you want to get a week in September, for example, standard view room in September, you're looking at 97 points for a week. Sorry, a Savannah view room in September is 97 points for a week at Animal Kingdom Lodge. The cost that would be to buy in cash is going to be probably twice what your annual dues would be. So it depends what you want to achieve. And so if you go to Disney enough, it is worth it. But you get put off when you hear things like timeshare. You get put off when they don't actually have any prices in the booklets that you look at, because then that takes a little bit of extra time and digging in, and they sort of sucker you in with it. But there are plenty of stuff, like I said, DVC resale market, DVC markets are all available, and the expiration dates for different resorts end at different times. Like I've got a list here, for example. So Animal Kingdom Lodge 2057, for example. So if you get a Animal Kingdom Lodge contract, you're good till then. Polynesian 2066, Riviera 2070, as I mentioned. There are a lot of cabins at Fort Wilderness is 2075. So if you are committed to Disney, and you can pass this on in your will, it's not a huge thing. And unlike the old school nightmare timeshares, it isn't a tax burden. It's not something you have to worry about in terms of, if you can't afford it, it's not going to bankrupt you. You can get rid of it whenever you want. You can either sell it on a resale platform, or you can just say to Disney, I want to take it back. That'd be a bit silly, but you could do. So I understand the concerns and hesitations about timeshares, but I was put off for this for years. And then when I was at Alani, it was last year, I sat down with them and had a conversation, and I was like, oh, I appear to have bought this hook, line, and sinker. But if you watch our video about staying on-site versus off-site, some people prefer to stay off-site and fight I-4 traffic, and I'll never understand that. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your attendance this week and what has been a quick counter through DVC and what it is. If you have further questions, please drop them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer. There is a ticker across the bottom bar regarding Instagram and TikTok and other things that do the interneting. If you want to get hold of us, comments, emails, whatever it is, and we'll reply to you. Thank you very much for your attendance as always, and please stand clear of the doors. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.